Hello there everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Good Game of Fun. This is me, THP, talking to you guys once again, and here are my thoughts on Dragon Ball Super Broly, and it should be pretty obvious to you. If you follow my Twitter, if you follow the Discord, you guys know I thought the movie was freaking awesome. And I was as hyped up as everybody else was in the audience. It was completely packed at the movie theater where I was at. Me and my brother went to see it, and man, did we look like a bunch of stereotypes when we showed up. Like, everybody kind of looked like us, black framed glasses, young adults, Dragon Ball t-shirt, a little bit of beard, right here. I mean, I just shaved off mine, yesterday, but like everybody was like, they kind of looked like us, and so damn. If there was any place for people to overgeneralize people in any way, then you can go to that movie theater and definitely do it there, and you wouldn't be wrong. And so we deliberately went out of our way to go to a packed movie theater because we knew that there'd be a lot of super hype moments that everybody would react and scream and clap to. For some people, that's really annoying, and people get really cynical about like, there are people at a movie theater, getting excited about things, just shut up. I'm like, okay, you can just not go to those times. You can wait like 3 weeks after the movie is out and then go there where it's like empty, but I usually enjoy it, depending on the kind of movie that it is. I like hearing the people freak out a lot, and sometimes I don't. For the most part, I do. I mean, it's all part of the fun. That's where you go with a whole bunch of people in a packed theater. But, that happened a lot because, the animation, the sound. Actually, in my movie theater, the volume of the movie was actually very low. Like, you could barely hear anything. And when people were like, woo, like freaking out, like, you might as well have muted the entire movie because you honestly could not hear anything, which was a massive bummer. Like, that really made me want to watch the film on IMAX. Maybe that's why the volume was so low. Maybe they wanted to get me to buy IMAX ticket, motherfuckers. But anyway, that's enough about my film experience at the movie theater. How was the movie itself? Well, I thought it was amazing. So that I could stay on track and not go on to a lot of tangents, I actually have a list here on my phone of a bunch of bullet points of what I liked a lot about the movie, and a couple of cons. Now, granted, all of the criticisms that I have is, I'll admit, I really was stretching a lot. I was really looking for something to point out, but honestly, this movie, if you're a Dragon Ball fan, you're gonna love it regardless. There really aren't a lot of problems. There are more concerns more than problems, or maybe stuff that might, confuse or disorient the audience at some points. They're not necessarily inherently bad, just stuff that I, observed as I watched the movie. So don't even take the cons as cons, and more as just observations from the movie. So the first point is that the animation was amazing, and yes, that's kind of a given, that's kind of like the most obvious thing. There was an art style change, everything looks a lot simpler with less detail, but that's good because that means that they can put a lot more detail on the in-between animations and all of the fights, and making everything feel and move around in a much smoother way, and it definitely shows in this movie. And you can prove that they really put a lot of love and attention in the in-between animations and making everything be smooth, because in the credits, you see like freaking 100 people on the in-between animation position, and my younger brother, who's an animator, he knows that struggle, so he points at the screen and he says, those are the heroes of the movie right there. And I completely agree with him. Everything from the punches to the facial expressions to more subtle movements and the more, dialogue-centered scenes. Not everything is fighting, believe it or not. People actually sit around and talk a little bit. And a lot of those, motions are very fun to watch. They're very free-flowing. They feel very natural. When it comes to the transformations, all the special effects with the aura and the ki blast and all that, that looks awesome as well. So when it comes to the audio-visual experience, even though in my movie theater the volume was kind of low, for all the more exciting parts, everything was loud enough and hype enough, and yeah, it is just awesome. It's amazing. If you guys were a little concerned over how different this looked, don't be. It looks amazing. It really, really does. The second point is that the movie is really funny at the appropriate times. One of the reasons for why I didn't really like Battle of Gods at all, as opposed to other people that still put Battle of Gods higher than even the Broly movie, I think those people are crazy, but that's just my opinion. I didn't like Battle of Gods because I feel like they overloaded on the comedy too much and kind of left the action all the way to the very end. It seemed like just a tad too kid-friendly. I just thought they were doing a bunch of like cringy baby shit for the little kiddies that will watch the movie. Before they realized like, oh, there's still adults that watch Dragon Ball, and then they made Resurrection F from the Broly movie. I feel like they just leaned on that a little bit too much, and then they did the fight that didn't really amount to a whole lot of anything, in my opinion, and that's why I didn't really like it. But I feel like they really corrected their course with Resurrection F and in this Broly movie, because they're kind of weaving the comedy and the story and the combat together into one more consistent thing, as opposed to kind of sectioning off, okay, here are the funny bits and here are the serious bits. No, everything just kind of exists together, which is a very Akira Toriyama thing to do. You know that this is an Akira Toriyama script when it kind of has that very distinct kind of gag sort of comedy, and you see that a lot with, you know, some stuff that happens with Frieza, the way that Goku behaves, and some very small things, some small character interactions like Goku and Bulma, you know, because Bulma has pretty much all the Dragon Balls, 6 of them, for a certain wish, and, you know, they start talking about, you know, why they gathered them in the first place, what Frieza's wish is, and, you know, the brand new supporting characters, Chila and Lemo, they have their own bits, so everything just feels very natural and doesn't feel really forced, or it doesn't feel like, oh, here's the part where the kids are gonna be, you know, happy, you know, this is not the fucking bingo dance or anything like that, you know, Vegeta dance, you know, whatever. I feel this is way better executed, way better written, and, yeah, you know, Dragon Ball has always had a comedy. Akira Toriyama is more of a gag manga artist. Dragon Ball is kind of like the one and only, like, super serious thing that he has ever done. So, I do like the comedy. I'm not saying that I don't want it and that I want everything to be serious. I just want things to be better molded together, and they definitely do that here in the Broly movie. So my next point, I'll probably tackle 2 of these in one. So one of them is the new characters are good, and the new Broly is great. So yeah, that kind of goes without saying. Both are I'm kind of saying the same thing on both of them. So yes, the brand new characters are really good. Chila and Lemo are 2 people within the Frieza Force. They're kind of good guys. Just because they're in the Frieza Force doesn't mean that they're bad. They even say in the movie that they're kind of hanging out on Frieza's side just because they want protection, you know? As soon as other people know that they're allied with Frieza, nobody touches them. And so they say, oh, you know, it's a good job, it's a good pay, whatever. You know, they're kind of just doing it to survive, as opposed to them just being evil. And you know that they're not evil because immediately the moment they bump into Broly, basically, they kind of just, you know, find, oh, what? There's a distress signal in this, you know, planet. And so they go and they find Broly and they find Paragus and they save them, and they get to know Broly over time, and they're like, oh my god, Broly's being treated like shit by his dad. You know, I feel bad for him. And so both of them kind of do everything possible to give him food, talk with him, respect him, you know, treat him nice, right? And so that's where we start to see Broly sort of talk, and, you know, instead of being like the big hulking beast that we yell Kakarot every 5 seconds just because Kakarot was a little bit annoying when he was a baby, well, that Broly doesn't exist anymore. There's a much better, more fleshed out Broly, and yeah, he comes off as very likable, to the point that you want to root for him, right? Because he's not a villain. He's not a bad guy that you have to annihilate and defeat. He's just a poor kid that was controlled by Paragus and now by Frieza as well, because, you know, Frieza wants revenge on Goku, Paragus was revenge on Vegeta because of everything that happened in the past. You know, like almost like the first 30 minutes of the movie is like some pretty hardcore lore on the past with Planet Vegeta and stuff, and so that's how you get to understand where Paragus and Broly are coming from. More Paragus more than anything, and Broly's just kind of there as sort of like the dog that kind of does the fighting for everybody, which makes you really feel bad for him. I felt bad for him for sure, and Chila and Lemo feel bad for him, and so that they're defending him all the time and helping him out. So yeah, I like them a lot. Those 2 are really, really fun to see on screen, especially Chila, because she's really pretty, I'm not gonna lie. And there's even some fan servicey moments where, like, you know, Chila is grabbing like her Saiyan armor and like stretching it out, and you can see her boobs, and there's some butt shots here and there. Some people will be like, ugh, but for me, I'm like, yes. So yeah, Broly's really good. Even though they do focus a lot on Broly, I guess the consequence to that is that everybody else, you know, Beerus, Whis, Goku, Vegeta, all of those people are just kind of left on the sidelines. I feel like those characters and the fight that comes with it kind of doesn't matter as much as everything that happens, you know, with the backstory of Planet Vegeta and Paragus, Broly, Chila, Lemo, and Frieza. You know, I feel like all of those matter a lot more than Goku and Vegeta. They're kind of just there on the side to just kind of fight somebody strong. In fact, you know, the entire second half of the movie is the Broly fight, and to me, it just feels like that was sort of something on the side. because what I wanted to see more, what I was more interested in, was seeing just kind of Broly come out on his own, and for him to realize that it's being controlled, and for him to realize that Goku and Vegeta aren't really bad people. But I guess I figured that out throughout the fight. I don't know. I just feel like because there's no true bad guy in this fight, it didn't really feel as important as all of those moments where the characters were just kind of sitting down and talking. I know that sounds a little weird, but nevertheless, that doesn't mean that the fight was bad. It was fucking amazing. Which brings me to my next point, which is the fights were awesome, the audience reaction was fun, the English dub was great, and interesting implications for the future. This is like 4 bullet points that I'm going to tackle right here in one go. So yes, the fights really were amazing. There were a lot of really hype moments. Obviously, you know, you gotta have that escalation, right? You start at the base form, and you start transforming increasingly to all the different forms. Everything looks really cool. Even the regular Super Saiyan transformation looks awesome in the way that they portrayed it here. There are many moments where, because again, I was in a packed movie theater, whenever you saw them like charging up, everybody was like, oh, 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 you know, just all of this freaking out. Slight spoiler here. There's a moment where Goku is Super Saiyan Super Saiyan God, and he's about to go into Super Saiyan Blue, but he's like really struggling. He's like really pushing it, and for a split second in that transformation, his hair goes white. And so everybody goes from like, just like, people just completely freak out because, you know, we all know that Ultra Instinct is not gonna show up in the movie, right? But when you see the hair go white, everyone's like, oh shit! Oh! Like you think he's gonna go Ultra Instinct, but no, they tease us. They tease it for like a second, and then he goes Super Saiyan Blue, and that's awesome as well. And then the fight goes on, but everybody just creamed to their pants when they saw the hair go white for just that little moment. Seeing everybody lose their mind and scream, I mean, again, for some people that's annoying. For me, that was half the fun of watching the movie. Which brings me to talking about the English dub. So I saw this movie in the United States when it came out. I remember that the Spanish Latino dub came out a few days before this one. I think it came out on the 11th in Spanish. And I have not seen it in Spanish yet, and I really, really want to, because in my childhood, I grew up watching Latino dub Dragon Ball, which to me, in my personal opinion, after watching Dragon Ball in Japanese, in English, in Spanish, and even in a couple of other languages, I feel like the one in Spanish is the best one, in my opinion. But I saw it in English first, and I thought that the dubs with Sean Schummel, Chris Sabat, all of these people completely knock it out of the park. I thought the dub was really, really awesome. And you know, if you're gonna give the English dub an edge over any other dub, is that they are experts at screaming a lot. They definitely execute the screaming and all of the attacks and stuff better than in other dubs. And so for such an action-heavy movie, I feel like, you know, that was necessary to pull off right, and they most certainly do. Even for the brand new characters, and even for Broly, there isn't a single voice that feels out of place. Everything was done very, very well. So congratulations to the people that dubbed this movie, because when it comes to dubbing anime in English, it is a very hit or miss job. And so Dragon Ball has consistently delivered a very good dub to the series, so I congratulate you, because not everybody can do a good English dub, believe me. And so for my last point in terms of the pros is that for all of the events that happen in the fight, they leave some really interesting implications for the future. So as I said, if you guys thought that the Dragon Ball Super anime would end and there wouldn't be anything else, well, after watching this movie, there's a pretty hardcore confirmation that things are nowhere near over. You know, the story will continue. The entire movie feels to me like a big setup towards more stuff that'll happen in the future. And I think that's cool, because again, as I said, Broly is not really a villain. He's kind of just a consequence of, you know, Paragus wanting revenge and Frieza wanting revenge, and these guys getting together and sort of both of them using him as a way to kind of get what they want. And so he's not a villain, so he doesn't really, you know, end in the way that you would expect. This is a slight spoiler, but at the same time, it is pretty obvious that Broly makes it out okay out of this movie. But it's not just, oh, he's alive and he goes away and that's it. No, like, you know, in a very Goku fashion, Goku kind of makes friends with Broly, and that kind of leaves it open for, you know, Broly to sort of show up in future arcs, you know, in the same way that kind of, you know, Goku made friends with Jiren after fighting a lot in the Tournament of Power. He's like, oh, we'll see each other again, or we'll train together, or something like that. You can kind of see him being an ally in some other future arc of Dragon Ball Super, or, you know, what have you. And of course, you have these brand new characters in Chilai and Lemo who are friends of Broly now. Like, they're very close allies, and they're very much, like, in it together now, because all of the stuff that they do in the movie where they go against Frieza and, you know, they kind of screw him over in many moments, they sort of escape along with Broly, and they kind of get out of there alive, out of that whole battle. And so now the three of them are together, and it seemed like they're not going away, which I think is a really good thing. Usually when it comes to these anime movies, whether it's Dragon Ball or Naruto or One Piece or whatever, they usually like to have these non-canon movies, and they usually, you know, insert a bunch of new characters and new villains that kind of just live and die by the movie that they're at, you know, and after the movie's over, you never see them again, and that's it. Well, here it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. It seems like these characters are here to stay, and that's a good thing in my opinion. Whatever they do in the future, I am more than happy to see these characters develop further, especially Broly, because now he has a personality, he talks, you know, there's a lot more going on with him, and having Goku at his side, and having Chilai and Lemo at his side, and having all this backstory sort of reaffirmed for us, going forward in the Dragon Ball story. I think they are, this entire movie is 100 minutes of just setting the stage for some awesome stuff in the future. And now with that said, I'm gonna move on to the cons, or some criticisms, observations of the movie. Again, I really tried hard to kind of look for stuff, so most of this is gonna seem like reaching, probably because I am. So don't consider this as like, oh, the bad parts of the movie. Again, these are just some small observations that are not really bad, but you know, you might notice when you watch it. So the first thing during the animation is that there are a couple of bits of CGI that do kind of disorient you, because everything is so well made and well drawn and very smoothed out. Just suddenly out of nowhere you see like Dragon Ball FighterZ graphics of like, blah, you know, they don't transition super well. In fact, they do some movie trickery here by having the CGI segments be super duper fast, to the point where like you can't really stop and notice that it's CGI until after it's over, and it's like, wait, you know, it's not until you see the 2D animation again where it's like, huh, you know, wait, that the previous thing was certainly different because this looks better. But it is very few and far in between, like it barely happens. There's a lot of CGI stuff that is pretty good, like the Frieza spaceships look really cool. As I said, a lot of the ki blasts and the special effects for, you know, like the death energy balls and the aura that emanates out of all the characters when they power up. All of that is really, really cool. I talk more from the perspective of the actual models of the characters, particularly Goku and Vegeta, that do look a little bit strange in a couple of minutes. You even notice it in some of the trailers, but it's not bad enough to ruin the experience as a whole. You notice it, but it's not a deal breaker by any means. Another thing is not really the fault of the movie, but more the fault of the marketing for the movie. I feel like everybody has said this already, but it bears repeating now. Pretty much everything got spoiled during the trailers. Like, there were so many trailers that came out for this movie as a way to get people to watch it. You know, they spoiled that Vegeta goes Super Saiyan God. You know, they spoiled, you know, that Gogeta was going to be a thing. There were just a lot of things that they sort of revealed in the trailer where they didn't really have to, you know, just showing more of the backstory or showing more of, you know, the early stages of the battle. That would have been more than enough. But I don't understand why they thought it was necessary to reveal all of these awesome things that could have been really surprising during the movie. Now, granted, that didn't stop anybody from freaking the fuck out whenever Gogeta shows up, but, you know, still, could you imagine how much bigger the surprise could have been if they didn't give you fucking, like, little tiny Gogeta posters whenever you walked into the movie theater when you showed your ticket? It's like, here, have this little slip with Gogeta's face prominently on the goddamn thing. Is like, dude, come on. Now, as I said, this really doesn't have anything to do with the movie by itself. I'm not saying that the movie is bad because of it. All I'm saying is that for somebody viewing this for the first time, it could have been so much more hype if nobody knew about that. And, you know, we just went into it blind, and we got that surprise of the fusion of Super Saiyan God of Vegeta and all of these things. Now, granted, there are some surprises here in this movie that were not revealed in the trailers. Some pretty awesome stuff during the fights, but still, you kind of already have a gist of how everything's gonna go down from the very beginning. Another criticism that I have is during the second half of the movie, after the fight starts, like, that's the whole movie. Like, it doesn't end until the movie ends practically. I personally found all of the dialogue segments, everything about the lore for Planet Vegeta, Chila and Lemo talking to Broly, all of this stuff seemed to me like that was the actual story. And then the fighting was kind of off to the side with no real purpose other than, sort of a distraction from what I actually cared about it, which was seeing, like, kind of Broly sort of, relieve himself of the shackles of his dad, or, seeing Chila and Lemo trying to help or something. I was just more invested in that. And because, Broly, as I said before, wasn't really a villain that was meant to be eliminated, I just kind of felt like, what's the point of all of this? Goku and Vegeta don't even know what the hell's going on, They know about Frieza, and they're focused on Frieza, but then Broly comes in, and now they fight him for, like, an hour. So, like, it's a little tough for me to be like, alright, to really root for them, or to care, or really wonder what the point of it is. When, Goku and Vegeta are just clueless most of the time. It's like, okay, strong guy, fight him, And the true story is all of these other characters that are not fighting. But, again, the fight is still really hype, and it does eventually amount to something, with Goku kind of becoming friends with Broly by the end of it. But, yeah, I feel like most of the fight was sort of like its own side thing, like it was more of a spectacle than it was anything that meant anything story-wise. Again, it's not until the very end when, like, Gogeta starts fighting Broly where things sort of start to matter a little bit more, When Frieza does certain things to really push Broly to kind of become stronger and stuff like that, and then seeing, Chila and Lemo see this and be like, guy, poor Broly, we gotta do something about it, and that's when, things get more interesting, right? There's this whole fight for the Dragon Balls and stuff. I feel like the fight is sort of inconsequential when you factor all of that other stuff in. But yeah, like, there's really, like, no more story after that. They kind of, like, front load all of the story at the beginning and then have everything just be the big fight at the end, only for it to just kind of sort of end, it just kind of ends. And then the story, the more interesting story comes in towards the end. And then they kind of recontextualize it to kind of make that fight matter after the fact. So, I don't know. Whenever I think more and more about the fight between Goku, Vegeta, and Broly, it just matters less and less and less to me, I think more on it, and I'm like, what was even the point of the fighting? It just seems like a distraction from the actual story that I was invested in at the beginning. Now, speaking of being invested, one of the biggest criticisms that I have probably is the music. The soundtrack was decent, but not great. Now, this is probably the nostalgic boy inside of me, but I personally love the original Dragon Ball Z soundtrack so much more than any other soundtrack. I like it more than GT, I like it more than Super, I like it more than in any of the movies. In fact, this soundtrack sounded very Super-esque. If you've listened to the songs in Dragon Ball Super, especially during the Tournament of Power arc, a lot of it is going to sound very similar to you. But a lot of the music sounded just kind of stupid. Just like very repetitive, strange. If you guys remember that song from Resurrection F that was like Frieza, 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 where they just said the word Frieza over and over again. Well, they thought, well, how about we do this for, like, fucking everybody? Like, when Goku starts fighting, it's like, Kakarot, 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 Kakarot. And when Vegeta comes in, Vegeta, Vegeta, Vegeta. When Broly's fighting, Broly, Broly, Broly. Like, just all of these songs were kind of the same thing, but just yelling out the names of the person that was fighting at the time. When Gogeta shows up, it's like, Gogeta, Gogeta, Gogeta. I'm like, great. Like, how creative, If they're gonna do that, like, I would very much rather have, like, a much more, like, space opera type of music, like the orchestrated, like, string section music that they had back in Dragon Ball Z. Now, I am not saying to just copy-paste the same music and just slap it on here, like how people do on YouTube, where they just slap the fucking god-awful Bruce Falconer music into fucking everything. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, like, do something that is in that same style, something that is in that same spirit, because there were many moments where I saw somebody charging up, and there was this music that just felt like generic action music. It felt very hollow, very surface level, and it didn't really get me as emotionally invested as, you know, some scenes in Dragon Ball Z where somebody charges up and you hear like, dun dun, dun dun dun, dun 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 dun. Like, everything just felt more bombastic, more epic, you know, not in the meme aspect of epic, but just the, like, truly epic, you know, something that really felt like a galactic thing, something of really big, massive proportions. And here, it just feels like action music, you know? And it wasn't bad action music. I just feel like, you know, that orchestrated, you know, original Dragon Ball Z style would have fit this so much better. You know, seeing the fights, and I could just imagine just the music in my mind and having it fit better, you know, like you know, just all of those very iconic, memorable melodies, you know, you know, all of that stuff to me just made more sense to me in this movie as opposed to the very, again, like very hollow, very like whatever action music from Dragon Ball Super that kind of got expanded on here. And again, you know, just like repeating the name of Gogeta, 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 Gogeta. And like, honestly, like they could have done so much better with the soundtrack. It's not bad, but holy shit, it's lacking. Another thing that I want to point out is for people that, you know, watch the anime, that remember the anime, that will probably get a little confused at some of the stuff that happens towards the beginning of the movie because this is an Akira Toriyama written, you know, story. And so this is going to be based on the Dragon Ball Minus manga that he made, where it was his version of the Bardock story. The Bardock TV special that most people know about is just something that Toei Animation just made up. Like, that is not an Akira Toriyama thing. They just made it up. They made up Bardock and everything. But Akira Toriyama said, oh, I like Bardock, he's cool. And so he took that character and made his own story, like his own official story of the Planet Vegeta stuff from the past. And so there's going to be a lot of things that might not fit into what you guys remember. None of it is really bad, you know, there's no, like, big, like, what? How can you do that? You know, they kind of just expand more on stuff from the past. You know, they show certain characters that you might have forgotten about. You know, some children in there that eventually grow up to show up in Dragon Ball Z. And yeah, nothing inherently bad, but, you know, just sort of pointing it out that if you guys remember the Bardock special, just forget about it because that's not what's happening here. Bardock is kind of a different character here, and I think for the better. I feel like he's a lot better here. In the Bardock special, he's again more kind of like this, you know, brute that sort of just fights and hates Frieza and is angry and rah, you know. I guess people like the badassery of that, which is why people latch on to the older Bardock so much more, and maybe why people might not really like this newer Bardock, because here he's a lot more caring, a lot more soft, a lot more responsible. In other words, a better person and a better character. He's still a fighter, you know? He's still badass, but, you know, he's not as one-track mind meat-headed as he was in the Bardock special, and so I think I respect that a little bit more, even if most of the backstory is very much like copy-paste Superman with Dragon Ball lore slapped onto it, but I still like it more than what they had in the Bardock special. And it goes to show, I mean, this was something that Akira Toriyama made himself as opposed to something that Toei Animation made up, so it was kind of inevitable for me to, like, you know, to see it and be like, oh yeah, this is better. This is some Toriyama-ass stuff. And so the final thing that I want to point out in terms of cons, just something that I found just kind of funny about the movie. Again, this is some very slight spoiler territory, but I'll say it anyway because I just thought this was just a little frustrating in the movie, is that the entire time Frieza's trying to look for the Dragon Balls, and I think so far they have like 6 of them because they steal them off of Bulma, and there's only 1 left, and they very quickly find that last Dragon Ball. When I found out that, you know, the story kind of revolved around the search for the Dragon Balls, I thought that the whole movie was going to be, like, everybody fighting for these damn Dragon Balls. But no, that's not it at all. Like, literally the moment that Frieza arrives on Earth, he has all 7 Dragon Balls in his hands pretty much the entire time. And at this moment, he's like, oh yeah, I want to see what Broly can do. I want to see, you know, my lapdog fight the people that I hate. And he just sits there. Like, he barely ever fights during the movie. He has the Dragon Balls in his hands the entire time. And during the whole time, I'm thinking, you could be making your wish right now, you know, because this whole thing is because he can make his wish, and, you know, by grabbing the goddamn Dragon Balls. And he goes minutes, many scenes with the Dragon Balls floating in his hands, and he eventually gives it away to someone else. He's like, oh, I'll deal with this later. And I'm like, you fucking idiot. Why would you do that? Like, the entire time where Goku, Vegeta, Broly are busy fighting Broly for like an hour, during that entire time it never fucking occurs to you to just like, oh, Dragon, come out, give me my wish, done, leave. Like, the whole thing takes like a minute or two. And the entire time you just sit there with the prize in your hands and you never use it. And you in fact give it away to, you know, Chile and Lemo, who eventually use the Dragon Balls to screw Frieza over. And so, like, yeah, you know, I feel like everything was in Frieza's favor the entire time. But he bides his time and he just sits there and he lets things happen. And, like, the dumbass, like, no, all the bad things that happened to Frieza in this movie, he brought it upon himself, the freaking idiot. No, and he's like, oh yeah, I want to use the Saiyan and see how powerful he is. So he keeps pushing him and pushing him and pushing him, and of course it blows back in his face, you know. Of course, this is done for the sake of making the movie more interesting, and, you know, the backfiring obviously, you know, makes the movie more interesting, it makes it more exciting. It's just, I know why they do this, but, like, reasonably speaking, when you think about Frieza and how conniving and manipulative he is, you think that he would take that time where everybody else is fighting to just, like, summon the dragon and just do the thing and leave, considering what the wish is as well. So, like, yeah, it's just kind of stupid, where, like, you know, he has what he wants right there. You know, he could just bail out, leave, and get his wish. But no, he just stands there and never uses them. So that's just kind of stupid. But, you know, whatever. Considering what the wish is, in a sense, it kind of doesn't matter. But there you go. Those were all of my bullet points that I wrote down, and that's pretty much all I have to say about the movie, both in terms of positives and potential negatives. I thought the movie was great. Obviously, if you're not a Dragon Ball fan, and you're not gonna know what the hell is going on here at all. You're not gonna have any idea. And if you want to get into Dragon Ball, this movie is not for you either. You know, watch Dragon Ball Z and all that stuff first, and then after you know everything, or at the very least, watch Dragon Ball Super and the Tournament of Power and all that stuff, and then watch this, because otherwise, you're not gonna get it. This is very much for the fans. There are a ton of cameos and a ton of references. There's so many appearances, in fact, that you literally, I'm not even joking here, like, you can blink and you can miss an appearance by certain characters. You know, there's a part where Goku says, oh, we have fought many different guys, and, like, all the different villains show up, and, like, they pass, like, so quickly, so you can blink and miss it. So, like, there's so many different appearances, so many references that only Dragon Ball fans will appreciate. Stuff from the past where it's like, oh, you know, you have these telescopes that are like scouters, but no, here, you know, we have more advanced technology now. Here are, like, the actual scouters, and, like, you know, it's only stuff like that by knowing Dragon Ball, you'll see it and acknowledge it and be excited about it. Anybody that's new, I would be really hard-pressed for them to, A, understand what's going on, and B, enjoy themselves because of it. But anyway, that about does it for me. Good movie, thumbs up, go see it if you like Dragon Ball. It is not every day that we find a 2D animated movie in the movie theaters, so please show your support and prove, to at the very least to the American audiences, that 2D animated movies are still a thing, they're still awesome, and anime movies are also really awesome. I know that in Mexico, they are much more open to putting anime movies in the movie theater. They had, like, Saint Seiya and, like, My Hero Academia and all of the Dragon Ball movies and Magical Girl movies. Like, there were a lot of, Latino dubbed anime movies in Mexico recently that have come out in the movie theaters. And in America, you don't even catch anybody dead putting any anime in the movie theaters. Unless it's Dragon Ball, apparently. So, you know, go in there, show your support. And, yeah, I highly recommend this movie. I like this. This is probably, out of the 3 Dragon Ball Z Super-ish movies that have come out, you know, Battle of Gods, Resurrection F, and this one, for me, the Broly movie, yeah, for sure, it's like up there, and then Resurrection F, and then Battle of Gods. I definitely enjoyed my time a lot, so much so that, you know, when I go visit my hometown again, I very much want to go and watch this movie in Spanish and see how that one squares up. Because, you know, considering how it was voice acted here, I really want to see how it translates to the other language, and that's a whole different experience in itself. So, if you guys enjoyed this, be sure to give this video a like, and of course, you can subscribe, and hit that bell icon, comment whatever you want, and all social media links are down in the description below. And I'll see you guys next time for some more videos. enjoy the movie if you guys go watch it. And if you have, then yeah, hopefully you guys liked it too. Let me know what you guys think. I'm interested to know. Bye.